Yes. Action! Hello, everyone. Hello, Kadesh. In our last episode, I interviewed you about your work and humble beginnings here in Iceland. However, this time, I anticipate that the interview will be more of a conversation. I understood that there were certain topics you wished to discuss, and among them was one that I am particularly interested in, namely the use of psychedelics, especially mushrooms, and their effects on the human psyche. A lot of people claim that mushrooms can be used for healing, but you mentioned to me that after a certain journey you had with your beloved at the time, Aurora, she changed her perception of you and your relationship was never the same. Would you be willing to elaborate on your relationship with mushrooms and perhaps share the story of you and your partner?
Wow. Um, yeah, it is a surprising introduction. And um, in a way, my instinct is, wow, this topic is so intimate and so belonging to us. Yet, in the other side, I saw this topic became public with her, like the topic of our relationship.
Has become
Like,
public, yeah.
yeah, so I was contemplating with myself how much to bring that at all
Yeah.
to the like, because it's private. Like, why would people put their nose into my life in a way? But I I had the inspiration of looking at it as in a way the collective is requesting clarity on that topic
Yeah.
because there is not yet really knowing. Of course, there is a righteous knowing, but this is not truly knowing. This is holding on to a belief rather than thinking and doubting and like coming to make sense around topic of morality in a way. I think that's the essence of what society is united around, or like a culture is like that's the foundation of a culture. I think is the definition of ethics.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right. It's like the unwritten code.
Well, I think it is written. It just not necessarily in a formal, conscious way,
Mm.
but somehow it is because it's already coded.
So what is your perception of psychedelics? Because if I share from my understanding, as a kid, I didn't even know about psychedelics. I knew that drugs are bad. Don't use
Yeah.
drugs. That was my thing. I had no idea about mushrooms. I don't know when magic mushrooms even became part of my field of knowledge of existence.
Mhm.
But anyway, they seemed scary and they seemed dangerous. And it seemed like I don't need this and I have to stay away from it because I could get addicted. So that was my idea on drugs and that kind of thing. And then I got in
Mhm.
I started meeting people in London, especially who really caught my interest because I could see that they were more free, more kind of loving and shining than other people I had met. And there was a theme that had been running among them of spirituality and ayahuasca. And I
Mhm.
started hearing all these terms, mushrooms and weed also,
Mhm.
actually. And so that was when I first became curious. And actually, I didn't become curious about mushrooms. I became curious about ayahuasca
Mhm.
because, yeah, it just seemed like something that was very valuable to experience. And then I got together with my boyfriend, um, and he was much more experienced with psychedelics and all kinds of other substances. And he was saying, if you're going to do ayahuasca, you have to take it slow. So you have to start easy. And so you have to first try weed and you have to first try mushrooms. And I was like, no. And he's like, so he convinced me. Not in a bad way. I'm happy he did. It sounds like he convinced me, but like I opened up to it, and it was a very interesting experience because it's not something that's easy to understand in the beginning. I remember I remember I couldn't really know what's going on because I didn't realize that it's my fears that are coming. So my perception of him did change. And I didn't understand what that means in a way. Like, I also saw him. I now understand that it's my own fears that were being projected on him. But because I didn't really have an introduction of somebody saying, okay, now all your fears are going to come at you so that you face them, I was just like a little bit confused, I remember, by everything that I saw. And then it was only going to Brazil and trying ayahuasca where the shaman actually said, okay, now get ready. All your fears are coming out. All your fears are coming out. Like, this is what we're going to do. So when she prepared me like this, I was like, oh, okay, so my fears are going to come up. And then everything made sense. Then the journey was unfolding like, oh, okay, I'm understanding why this is happening. I'm not afraid. I'm going with it, But without this preparation, I wasn't making sense of my psychedelic experiences. It was only really with a guide that then opened me to a higher understanding of how to handle this other state of consciousness, let's say. Mm-hmm. Because now, from now on, every time I go on a psychedelic experience, it is in some way, it's always me dealing with my shadow and then breaking into a new way of being. But now I've also come to this point where I don't really want to do psychedelics at all anymore. Mm-hmm. And because now I almost, after having an experience where I saw something that was so real that I thought it will come true, like a prediction, and then it never came true, I started thinking, okay, maybe this is messing with my understanding of reality. So I don't know, this is where I'm at right now. I'm at the point of first being really afraid, then falling in love with it, then now being a bit like, maybe I've learned what there is to learn here, but I don't know. What's your story with psychedelics? How did you start?
It was in high school, and it was after some years that I was practicing a lot of meditation and exploring different states of mind. And I was looking for an explanation. And I grew in I would say quite just mainstream culture, quite atheistic house with slight tendency to the beauty of tradition, but it's not dominant. There is also a lot of criticism about religious and spirituality in general. Like, that's the house I was growing in.
Did you grow up in Israel? Like, where in Israel did you grow up? You didn't grow up in Israel, did you?
Also, Holland and then Israel.
Okay. But it was atheistic.
What?
But it was mainly atheistic environment.
Yeah, and also the school was like not religious, and I was exploring these states, and I looked for understanding. So I read a lot of philosophy like existentialism and ontology and psychology, to understand these things, and I didn't find a clear understanding of that, like from these writings. And yes, like some abstract principles, you know, Spinoza's shift of perception of the absolute, or I mean, even Socrates already have been, in a way, understanding these states, but the mentioning of this stuff was very coded, and there was fear from the authoritarian governance or whatever it is, from uh, exposure of existence of these states, because they were threatening, in a way, the hierarchy. That's how I see it.
They are.
Like the Dionysian and the Hellenician temples of ancient Greece, they were attacked, or the temples of the goddess in Mesopotamia, like Ishtar, also, like this stuff were in a way that patriarchal hierarchy just shut it off and tried to suppress that. And part of these traditions was also very much including psychedelics, to explore to know ourselves in a wider sense, and not only from a very specific state of mind. And because I was meditating a lot, it's just like it came to a certain clarity, and I saw there is beyond that also, and I didn't have any reference. And actually the first book I met that have clearly started to describe an alternative possibility of perception, of ontology that is also practical, was like Native American shamanism, mostly starting from Castanada's book. So I kind of studied all of them, and he was a student of shaman Don Juan, which part of the initiation was also through psychedelics. And that opened my interest. That opened my awareness that there is such thing, and also an interest to understand and explore. So I came to it more as a scientist in my experience, to explore different types of plants, and studying, of course, before I even connect with the plant, studying the how it is affecting on the brain, on the body. Do I need to be aware of some stuff, like just the biochemics of it? And yeah, and then exploring. It was quite just a journey. I met on the way some people who have explored like LSD and like weed, and so that's how I opened to this world, basically. And with the years, I was curious to get to know different types that I've never tried, like different plants. So it was 2.5 decades ago, first time I tried, maybe a bit more. So I did try quite a number of times, but I think also it's like very rare actually that I do that. I especially in the last decade or even more, it's like at some point, like first of all, there are differences between different plants, and especially with the attitude of connecting to the plant spirit rather than is just a chemical. So there is it's like an interesting journey of, for me, was of meeting the consciousness, um, the consciousness, the one consciousness that exists, that express itself in all existence and all life and in many forms, and me as part of that consciousness, then also meeting through these plants or also mushrooms, these it's like they are teachers in a way, and some have different characteristics than others, and some are more similar, but it's just different allies on the journey of consciousness to me being as a little aspect of human consciousness. And just, it's like that was the exploration. And so to come to more clarity of what is consciousness, what is, like, therefore also states of consciousness is part of what gives clarity to consciousness, is knowing the range of different states and how it maps. And
Which plants?
later, what?
Which plants have you tried?
Most.
Isn't there like very much?
Um,
So the cactus,
I
ayahuasca.
mean,
Which
yeah. I tried these as well. Like most general types. I mean, I just, of course, there are many subtypes I have not tried, and that's the whole the whole discussion. I mean, even if you go into weed, there are so many types, and yet weed, yeah, it's a little bit relates to that category, but not really, because it's not. Um, but I would say eventually,
Sorry, 1 second.
okay.
My mother left her phone
Oh.
at home. It was ringing. Yeah, you're saying eventually, even though there's a lot of different types.
Yeah, eventually. I think the mushrooms are most supportive in the long term, and in the short term, some plants would be more beneficial. It depends again for what. Um,
What do you think is the trap of weed? A lot of, for example, weed I never liked. I tried it once and I don't like it at all. And I'm not sure why certain people like certain plants more. But I know that there's this myth that weed is not addictive, but I have seen with my own eyes a lot of people get addicted to weed. Meaning that they feel they shouldn't be using it, and they use it, and they don't like that they use it.
mhm.
What do you think? Have you ever been in this state, or from your observations of others, what do you think happens there? Like, because psychedelics are meant to not be addictive. This is the
It can be used for removing addictions, like for getting out of addictions, or more to say. And in a way, addiction, I see it as a habit,
yes.
basically. Um, so for me, it was mostly easy to stop whatever. Like, I think it was quite easy for me. If I don't wanna smoke, then I just don't smoke. And I have tried, of course, and there were periods I did it more, but Yeah, like many years passed since last time.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, like over a decade. And what?
Maybe it's because you started with meditation and all of
Mhm.
these things were just there like books to be read rather than something that you did as a social, like because of peer pressure or like a form of escape. Because I'm just wondering,
Mhm.
I'm wondering where is that line, because I don't believe in addiction in the sense that I think it's like a state of mind. The term addiction is
Mhm.
addiction.
Yeah.
Addiction. And I feel that when we are suffering is because we are disconnected from the voice of consciousness, the supportive voice of consciousness. So we can't hear in a way. So we need to add addiction. So we use tools to help us hear this voice, either to just relax, like alcohol. Maybe if you're really stressed, alcohol just lets you relax and show yourself more. Or I just know that, yeah, whenever I'm in this state of
Mhm.
anxiety or stress, this is when I would fall into bad habits. Um, that would be called addictions. Um,
Yeah.
but the state of
Stress.
anxiety and stress is, yeah, when you start listening to some kind of stressful voice in your head, perhaps, or
This itself can be an addiction. Stress.
stress can be an addiction.
Yeah.
You're
Th-
right.
That's that's how I see many people I met in my life that they are addicted to stress.
Wow. I never thought about this. You're right. You're actually right. Like putting yourself into stressful situations can become an addiction because it gives you an adrenaline rush.
Yeah, if everything is now nice and comfortable and ease, so something is missing. I need to feel like some anxiety because like so I will need to destroy something and make a mess or provoke or like there is not ability to just rest in the nice feeling that is around
But then,
or worry.
stress is growth, right?
What is it's
Stress is
growth?
growth, isn't it?
Depends how I mean it can be used in many ways. It can be also supportive for growth, but it can be addictive.
Like going,
Same,
no. Well,
same. I think weed. It can be supportive to some people for a period, like and even tobacco. I remember I met someone that had a genetic mutation that changed his blood cells in a way that for him to have tobacco sometimes is actually making him more healthy. Like stuff can be, it's just like I think what makes it addiction is that it becomes a habit that there is like automatic in a way pattern for the identity to be associated with it. Like for myself, if my identity is associated with smoking or associated with stress or with
oh,
whatever behavior, then I'm addicted to it because I cannot free myself from it and still be me. And regarding the etymology, like the ad and diction, maybe it is a diction. It's like not listening. Maybe. I mean, it's interesting,
addiction.
but that's what came from me.
You mean that you're ignoring something,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
speaking instead of
Uh,
listening.
yeah, creating a shadow piece in a way, cultivating ignorance of a certain part within.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. But how, so, okay, so speaking of light and shadow, how does one become aware of their shadow? And are you telling me that in these 25 years of exploring altered states of consciousness, you've never experienced a place where you, how can I say, kind of the shadow side of entering this world? Or how can I say this? Because the thing is, even with every experience that psychedelics have gifted me, I see it has been a gift. Even the shadow, the dark experiences, even the false beliefs. Like when I say, I'm just gonna give a very concrete example. So in one of my experiences, it was almost like consciousness was revealing, or whatever. Yeah, consciousness was revealing, like, here's your path. And it was showing me a lot of visions, some of which were very true to my heart. Like performing on stage and doing a lot of things that, after seeing them, it inspired me to reunite with those parts of myself. However, it also showed dark things. Like it showed war, and it showed my parents dying, and it showed like a lot of scary and deeply, deeply painful things, where I was even like, during this trip, I was even screaming and crying because I really felt like, it's not that I was being terrorized, but I was just feeling the pain of losing my parents. And it really felt like it would be true. It would come true. And this happened like 1 year ago. And then throughout the year, I kept receiving dreams and more confirmations whenever I would again enter altered state of consciousness, either through dreaming or through an altered experience, like having a psychedelic experience. I would again get these hints of like my parents dying. And then I really felt that this would happen. Finally, I didn't know when it would happen. Finally, I felt it would happen like 2 weeks ago, maybe end of February, and or 1 week ago, yeah. And I was completely convinced that it's gonna happen. And it ended up not happening, but to me it had happened. So in a way, I see the gift of it, because I got to go through what it feels like to have your parents die, and this made me value my parents even more. It made me understand what it would feel like to lose someone I deeply love. It gifted me a lot of things that are very hard to place. And it got me into connection with these shadows, this idea of being without parents and things like this. So but what I'm saying is, this was my first experience of something appearing really real and me believing it, and then it being completely false. Because it came from the underworld or something. Like I keep hearing these things, like in the consciousness world or spirit world, there's like the light side and there's a dark side, and I'm not understanding how this works. Have you ever looked into this? Have you explored? What do you think about it? Like this concept of the devil. Obviously, the devil exists, but it's not what we think it is. It's like a shadow self, or I don't know. Yeah, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I think the Jungian approach is a beginning of a direction that can bring a lot of clarity towards these wanderings. In a way, the personality is a product of the collective consciousness. Oh, Oh yeah, okay, you got frozen, but I see you now. Um, so the devil is something that culture have created in a way as the archetype that would be symbolizing what we judge as bad. Like he's the devil, he's the bad one.
Right.
And it's just a mirror, like, and from that mold in a way, human consciousness is created, or personalities are created. So it's like that's the like you make cookies from a certain mold, and so each one is a bit different, but they are kind of constructed from the same archetype structure, archetypal map, and every culture have its own variation of archetypal map. So the good and the bad often associated with the light and the dark, because in the light we can see, in the dark there is more people who are afraid of the dark, because the dominancy of the visual sensor in survival, and like also masculine feminine of course is part of that, like because it's very dominant in our experience that there are two sexes. And um, many other, like the mother, the father, the child, like it's archetypes. Different cultures have different associations with this archetype. They would make it an entity, a god or a goddess, with different tools, with different dressing, with different animals associated, with different mythological story, to symbolize, and it's in a way symbolizing the the spell in a way that this culture is under.
Mm.
It's like the word spelling. It's like, I remember a friend told me something that yeah, many people think that we people are creating the language, but we can look at it also opposite, that the language is creating the people.
Yeah.
And like the
Mm.
definition of time, the linear definition of it, or the genderization of objects, for example, in some languages, or um, words, the connective words, and describing something as a verb or a noun, and like calling to, like, am I a phenomena or am I individual? Like
Right. Yeah. Mm.
like it's many subtle nuances that are just subliminally affecting the structure of consciousness, and they are not viewed upon usually. It's just automatically acting itself in a society. And the meditation very much helps coming to clarity. Like the meditation, I mean, also the word meditation today is referring to so many things, but I mean in the, like, the original meaning of the word, in a way that, like the Zen meditation or Vipassana or Dhyana, like in the yoga, it's just observing the mind non-reactively, not doing any technique, basically just being and observing,
Mm.
and not with no attachment. Anyway, I think Buddha put the focus on that more than other traditions in a way. That's why the Zen is so clean in a way
Mm.
from
I,
um,
your emphasis on language as something which forms our way of thinking
mhm.
reminds me of nonviolent communication. Do you know Marshall Rosenberg, nonviolent communication? Have you studied this?
um a little bit, yeah.
Because I listened to his whole collection of seminars,
Mhm,
and one of the things he discovered, because he was trying to understand why
mhm,
are people violent, why is violence enjoyable, or like he concluded that violence is enjoyable. This is why
mhm,
people pick on others and discriminate, and because it gives them some kind of pleasure to actually do this.
Yeah, repressed sadism.
Possibly. Yeah, yeah. And
Somewhere on the spectrum, not
mhm,
necessarily deep.
and one of the things he discovered, so he was trying to understand how can we communicate to one another in a non-violent way. What does that mean? What does that look like? And he discovered that there's a culture in the world, I think one of the islands close to Australia and this Indonesian area. There's a language there that doesn't have labels to describe people. So for example, he is lazy, or he is not lazy, but what was it? Basically, to attach an identity, to describe a person
Hmm?
with an identity attached, as though instead of just describing a behavior. For example,
Mhm.
saying Jonathan likes to spend 3 hours on the couch a day. This is
Mhm.
how you would describe it. But in our language, we would say Jonathan is lazy.
Mhm.
Jonathan is um, evil, whatever,
Yeah.
is like, so you associate you judge it just by labeling a person a certain way. And he noticed that this language doesn't
Mhm.
have this way. If you can't form a sentence like that, it doesn't work. You can't say he is this, um and describe a behavior in one word or something.
Yeah. It's tricky though,
Mm.
because I met many situations, let's say, parallel to that example, if I would say, John, your behavior seems to me lazy today. So he would reply, oh, you saying I'm lazy? And that's like, no, I don't say you are lazy. I'm saying this behavior looks to me lazy.
But see,
And
that's a judgment. So
yeah,
that's
it is a
violence,
good
that's
one.
violent communication. He's
When I describe this behavior.
he was saying, even, yeah, because you're judging the behavior, you're not describing the behavior, you're judging it by saying that it is like this, like it
Mhm.
is lazy. Like he was saying that even compliments are violent. Saying you are beautiful, this is actually violent, because
Mhm.
it's attaching, it's it's describing you, it's putting you in some kind of box,
Mhm.
um which is uh I guess it's like, then your identity becomes attached to it or something. But
Yeah, so it's in a way to respect the sovereignty of the person to stay in ignorance of other perceptions. Maybe like if someone to want to not be like if John don't want to see himself in that way,
but
even though the action of just sitting on the couch for all day in front of the TV, like that's something,
but
then
the
yeah.
thing is, but it's still your judgment of his action. So for example, instead of
Mhm.
saying to a woman, you're
Yeah.
beautiful, you could say, I really like, yeah, he was saying that nonviolent communication is talking about personal feelings. So you could say, I
Well,
really like how your hair looks today. I really like how your smile looks today. Or
well,
and if John is being lazy and you want him to clean, you could say, when I see you laying on the couch 3 hours a day, I feel sad, because I feel like um you could be exploring you're not living your full potential, maybe like that.
which can be another judgment that you're not living the full
It is,
potential.
but then I'm taking responsibility for the judgment, because I'm saying I feel it's like this. But it's no longer like a universal truth. It's no longer me saying,
Oh,
John, you're being
so
Yeah.
So, okay, so exactly what I said. I said, John, it seems to me like your behavior is lazy. So
Ah,
it is, it seems to me. It doesn't mean it's true. And even not judging lazy as something negative, it can be just an observation, like objective observation. And like, it seems to me like that.
yeah, yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
yet,
Yeah.
still, the response would be, "Oh, you say you calling me lazy, or you saying I'm lazy, and you think I'm lazy." Like it goes usually there, and it shows to me the habit of people defining themselves according to stuff, and not like as if I'm either lazy or not. Like I'm somewhere in on
Right.
that spectrum.
Right.
And if you take me too far from the comfort zone of definition,
Mm.
like you take me in a way of you reflecting to me a part that is too far. No, that's not me. That might threaten. Comparing to the
Mm.
idea that each one of us have everything within.
Mm.
We have everything. We have the lazy, and we have the 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 very active one, and we have the evil one, and we have the angel one,
Mm.
and we have the feminine and the masculine, and we have everything as parts that construct the subtotal, which is the self, but without an individual in it.
Mm. Mm.
and
Yes.
and because there is no individual, there is also the archetype of God, like the monotheistic contribution to the archetypal mapping is like that what allowed construction of ego, construction of individual definition, is actually without the idea of God, the one absolute one beyond everything, an ego could not be defined in the first place. So we had God for thousands of years, and then ego crystallized. It, it's like each one of us is a differentiation of the larger thing we are part of, and it's like a fractal that, oh, there is that structure of God there, so that would be the center of identity. And then how do we associate, like,
Right.
so the, and then the shadow piece, of course, very much relates to the devil. It's what we put under the carpet, what we throw to the trash, what we don't want to own, what we don't want to compost in a way, and we put in the trash, like in the what
Uh,
we will find in the sewage.
right.
And
Huh.
it's becoming stinky, and yeah, it's not acceptable stuff. But some of the stuff there is vital and important. And it's not like it's bad just because it's judged to be bad, and it's automatic. It's not that it is essentially bad. Same like being lazy, it's not essentially bad. There are many advantages to lazy behavior at some points. I mean, to little
Yeah.
bit rest, to have less stress, to
Yes.
take it easy. It's an opportunity for connecting with people more in spontaneous activities rather than being very goal oriented for achievement, and not seeing who is near me now so much, just for enjoying the moment.
Yeah. But you know what is tricky about the things you mentioned? There was two ideas being birthed. One was perhaps, why we get offended. So for example, you say, Teja, like, I perceive you being lazy, and I say, you're calling me lazy.
Mhm.
Um, Perhaps the issue with this is, yeah, we identify the behavior with our own identity. So maybe the right way to view it would be to perceive behaviors as these entities themselves that come into us. Maybe this is the whole idea of like exercising your demons or something, that they're like thought patterns that can get stuck in your brain and put you into a certain habit. Yeah, like
The
same thing with
moment.
addiction or something. Yes, yes.
אני בשיחה עכשיו, אני לא יכול לדבר בסדר?
Nice.
My little niece.
Oh,
Mm.
I thought about this. But the other thing is what I'm not really understanding
Yeah.
is, you know, the transformation of light into shadow. For example, plastic, right? When I was growing up, this whole environmentalism thing started.
Mhm.
And so I was like, okay, everything that's not natural is bad. And I started like trying to be zero waste and went vegan and everything organic, and like I tried to take it to the extreme, um as far as it could go. But for example, my grandmother had told me, that, or even my mother had told me, like, before plastic came around, life was so hard. Before diapers came around, being a mother was so hard. Like my mom was saying, you have no idea what it's like to take care of a kid when there's no diapers. Like she said, diapers rescued us. And then even like the period of a woman, like there weren't any ways to take care, like there was so little personal hygiene things,
Yes.
so you had to like wash this rag, and there's just a lot of things that human evolution have made easier, but at the same time it has generated this problem of pollution and waste, and so then I have this question, like, what is light and what is shadow, especially now with this AI thing coming out and technology, technology being supposedly bad. Obviously it's not all bad. Like, look, you're in Israel now and I can talk to you, and 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 we have become more connected to one another than ever before. Like my parents were much more close-minded than you and I are, because um they never got to connect in such an intimate way to such a wide range of people, and to fly and to travel and airplanes and pollution. But at the same time, it's given us so much freedom and the possibility to learn from each other. So
Yeah.
what do you
As we
think about this?
as we advance and evolve, so we evolve the positive and the negative things together. Like, because we grow our power to do good and bad in a way. It's destructive and constructive at the same time. And so it's becoming more and more also important to be responsible, to know our responsibility. And in a way, as the power grows, we need to be more responsible for it. And now these days, the peak of technology, yeah, with the AI, but it's also with the social networks. It's also a very advanced part. And it's very much the effect on the minds of people, like and in a way that goes through the filter of intelligence of people. Like many people are conditioned in a way to think or to evolve opinions, and it is using their ignorance. It's using their it's it's bringing complex ideas that take advantage of the low intelligence of the majority for the ideas to come more, and of also using the ignorance for, like, nutrition is a very easy topic to point stuff like that, or psychiatry, like like you can see Ritalin used so commonly now in schools.
What? Ritalin?
Ritalin,
What's
yeah,
Ritalin?
It's kids who have ADHD, ADD, so they get a certain drug. It's basically like cocaine, on, but with
Really?
prescription to have a focus, and it's very addictive. And in a way, the pathology, the ADD, was invented after the drug. It's like to fit the drug rather than
What? You're
it's
kidding.
not a problem. It's like if a child is bored with what the teacher is teaching and not
Yeah.
submitting to this identity brainwash in a way, it can be seen like that as well. Then
Yeah.
then take Ritalin, and then it puts you in the focus. But then there is also more violence outside of the class. Like
Really?
that's a big problem in the US. Yeah, because if you suppress your energy, and then when it goes out more aggressively
Mm,
and less in control,
right.
and it also changes the brain. I remember when I was studying, I saw like it makes the prefrontal cortex smaller, and so there is less ability to uh, think before we act, and it's basically like that's what any addiction does actually. Like it, it changes the brain structure, and as more you have addictions, it's easier to have more addictions. And we live in a society that there are a lot of streams with interest to not only cultivate addictions, because the economic monopolies on some aspects like sugar and tobacco was exposed to some degree, but still, and alcohol is a big one. um, but there is also interest to cultivate ignorance from knowing, but like, why won't we teach kids how to take care of their health instead of teaching a nationalistic identity?
Mm.
Um, like, why won't, and even more in essence, why won't we teach kids to know the mind? Like, why don't we teach them to meditate instead of being then dependent on the healthcare system and the psychiatry that is still quite experimental? And
Who even created the education? Who wrote the education system? Because it's not that old, is it? I guess the
um,
rulers, whoever takes over in government, then writes the education system, right? Because it's not that
it's
old.
somewhere in the government. Yeah, the decision. It's related to the government, and that's why a lot of education systems cultivate for national identity or racial identity. Like it's a big part of that, rather than um, being more global. Like, growing in Israel, this is very common. It's very intense and dense because there needs to be a very strong mind control to rule the people here, because there is a lot of stress. As I see, the country was created as because it was the interest of the global weapon industry. It's like the Rothschild, who the main contributor of the creation of this country. He was also the main donor of the other side of the conflict, and then Israel makes great weapon and tested in the field, which makes the value much higher. And it's not the only thing, but I think it's a big influence on creating the country. And then also creating the education system. So bringing the narrative that we come back to the land of our ancestors that we left 2000 years ago, more than 2000 years ago. And
Let's
it's
all go to
actually ours.
Africa. Or
It's actually
then
our.
everyone is from there.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm.
Because there is a writing from at least 3,500 years ago that says that an ancient ancestor, Abraham, bought this land for money. And I mean, yeah, as a lawyer, I cannot argue with that in a way. It's like there is the formal piece there. Yet, since then, many, like there were other things happening here. But the education very much cultivates identity. So there is, first of all, the nationalistic aspect. It's like Israel, I am, and also the religious aspect, the Judaism, and then there is also the racial aspect, which is Arabs and Jews, as if there are different race, although it's actually it's the same race.
Mm-hmm.
And and there are also some issues of such types. What is your origin? Are you from Europe or are you from the Middle East? Like there are, and I see in a way the media and the political parties cultivating division, because division reduce unity of people. Therefore, the people have less power because the power is in the unity, and as more division, the people have less power, and then it's easier to control them because first of all there is more fear, so they less think for themselves because there is it's not like peace state, it's more like stress state. And second of all is because when you divide people to different groups, you can then focus on each group by itself and make the story more fitting, like manipulate the truth in a way more to the narrative, to the stereotypical narrative of the group you're talking to. And this is refining itself and becoming better and better. And I see it in every country. Like that's why would be a government that is able to take the money in a way or the power or the decision making from the people. Like that's even part of this deception is to say, yeah, we live in a democratic country, but who really makes the decision? It's like there are very few people there in the government that they vote and decide. And it's not really asking each one of the people, like we can do an app today with a phone and focus education on what is and focus critical thinking and and bringing more ideas and like and whoever is interested more in something. And every country have that because there are people who make a lot of profit, either economic or just feeling of power over, or or just like prestige, or how to call it, of being perceived in a way, looked up to, and
Yeah.
who, so they want to keep their position, so they don't want to support the change. And in a way also for the people it's easier to have that big brother or uh, that figure that is in authority, so we can then not take responsibility and rebel against or be bitter against. And so it's like it's just a reflection of the state. It's basically, for me, the source of it as I see it is, as people hold on to an identity, it's like constructing an ego and then trying to be in control to keep the ego that specific definition that I decided. And that trying to be in control is exactly mirroring in a society that is trying to be controlled. And the way to control is by dividing and like divide and conquer. So it's by division of identities in plural. And the gender is another issue in that, like that's the dominant one I saw in Iceland, but I see also a lot of, yeah, like racial and national aspect, of course. Uh, it can be also like, yeah, let's make this country great. I mean, but
Again.
uh, I
Let's
mean
make
it can be
America great
positive,
again.
but yeah, but why focus on the country and not this world? And you know it even, and it's so natural with the monotheistic approach, it goes even more to the root, because why is it in so many countries? Because the ability to construct an ego is part of our ability. It's like in the prefrontal cortex, our most evolved part, the abstract definition of anything, and first of all of self. So this ability to define it, it's like, okay, so what is my identity? And so it can be a national or racial or genderal or religious or whatever belief or facts, or like there are more and more reasons. But even more in the core of all of that is like being human comparing to other animals. It's like this superiority of human race, and as it, like it and it can reflect itself on a lot of the science of the last century, in a way, of as if there is an observer that is not part of the world and just observing fully objectively the experiment, as if I'm beyond, in a way. Like it's going really deep. It's touching the foundations of perception of reality. So uh, going into a plant psychedelic journey, it starts like these storytelling of what is the world and what is I. It just calms. It stops to be like there is less energy there, and then there is possibility to see alternatives. It can threaten the identity very much, and then defense mechanism can come up, and they might be so reactive that it would be a negative subtotal effect, because they will not come to full resolution. They will not fully surface up into consciousness. Like shame would be so strongly conditioned in the body, in a way, in the tissue, that it will keep it repressed and not recognized consciously, and therefore projected or whatever defense mechanism. So that is a possibility. Yet it can also bring something to confrontation and realizing, wow, I've been avoiding that, and integrating that. But again, it's part of the problem with psychedelics that it brings it so quickly, and it can very easily bypass the work of integration, comparing to meditation, for example. That I see a difference between psychedelics and meditation, that when you take psychedelic, you go out of your house into a train that takes you to new lands, to see new scenery that you never seen. Probably as more you take, it will be further and it will be more inspiring to what can exist in this world. But meditating, like fully going into it, sorry, it's leaving the house. I mean, you can carry your house with you and then you will move very, very slowly, or you can learn how to make a backpack with the tools that will take you along the way, and then you move faster, but you go there and you stay there. And if you get to the place that the train took the other person, you can just stay there. You don't look at it through a window. You are there. And you can then go further, or you can go back. It's like it's
But there's a
more
lot of, yeah,
yeah.
there's a lot of ways to travel, however. Like I'm finding that art is one way to travel. Because this whole attachment to the, yeah, like meditation, psychedelics, they take you out of your ego. But so does creativity, because it requires you to enter a certain flow state. And yeah, because I always thought, the thing is, I always thought that, not always, but I thought that the ego is a bad thing. Like we're supposed to exist in an egoless state the whole time. But now I'm realizing that this reality, this lived experience, is here for with a purpose. In a way, we want to experience ourselves as separate. So then the question becomes, how do you experience yourself as separate whilst knowing that you're not separate? And then what do you do with this knowingness? And what's the purpose of your life, in a way?
So if to synthesize, like we want to feel ourselves separate, but there is also part that want to feel united.
Hmm.
So in a way, we have both parts. It's not that we are that or that, but the ego part is the part that is defining itself separately,
Hmm.
and it is a part in a way. And dissolving the ego is just the beginning. Like this is the very, very beginning. And yeah, going into flow state, it's touching degrees of that dissolvement. But meditation is something that goes way beyond, and in the sense that the definition of self, I mean, the ego, the definition of self, the abstract definition of self, the word ego, it's coming from the interpretation of Freud's books to English. So Freud, he didn't call it ego. He called it, it was the letter I. It's like what we write as I. Like there is the ego, the super ego, and the id. It's like the three parts. The id is actually it. It's the object, like the avatar. The ego is I, is who I am. It's like the subject. And then there is the super I, the higher self. And so like what we can call the soul, or like our spiritual, like the true self in a way. And but yet there are degrees in that. Jung took it to the more spiritual. Freud more made it as a construct of society, and like it was more in the approach that God is there.
God is dead. Is that what he said? God is dead?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was a Nietzschean time then.
God is dead. Who killed God?
Oh, you don't know this quote from Nietzsche?
I know it, but it's just such a
Yeah.
funny thing. I mean, in a sense, God is dead. That's the whole point. Kind of. Like if this existence is living, then what is the other existence is not living.
I see. So yeah, it depends how you define God. I more relates to how Spinoza defines God. It's like it's beyond any contradiction, and it includes all contradictions. It's like everything you will point it as, it will be just part of it. So it's kind of a paradox in a way for the defining mind. But the thing is, without an ego, we cannot speak. We cannot define abstract meanings. So we cannot use words, because words is abstract definition of a meaning. Like we need ego if we want to communicate in a world of humans.
Yes, yes, yes,
And
yes, yes.
using the word I, the word that is written with the letter I, is the direct expression of existence. This is the technology of ego. We could not do that without ego. And yeah, there is the word I and there is the word you, and we use it to transfer information, or we take it to third person perspective and fourth and so on. But it, like, yeah, the subject, like the beginning, the first person perspective, single, not plural. It's like the beginning of definition of everything. And this what egos enables. So when we are in flow states, we're not necessarily like what we like, we will not speak from a place that we think how to construct the words and stuff. Usually we will not also speak, we will just be in a mode of doing. But in meditation, like the dissolvement of the ego, of the definition of self, is just the beginning. You can dissolve the definition of self, and then the self become more fluid, more in flow, but still there are different streams within the self that express themselves in a way, or are expressed through the art, for example, and then you can reflect upon it. It gives you another channel of information of what is, whether within, or you can interpret it in a way as from the super consciousness, from the higher consciousness, that is. But the meditation, beyond the exploration of different states of mind, which letting go of the familiar, the habit, the self we are addicted to. This is also a way to see it, actually. Like we started to talk about addiction. Ego often become an addiction as well. Like that we must be defined like that, and we need to be constantly defined like that, and there is no fluidity in that sense. And because it is, but it is a habit that is also very cultivated, because a person like that is more easy to predict.
Yeah, that's the point. If you change all the time, then your environment is also not certain of you, unless then change becomes your identity. Or like, you
That's
are, yeah.
the definition of ego, can refine itself. It can refine, and then I can be changed, but it's still a definition, and I can be, and this is a lot of also the use of soul. Like, I am a soul, I am incarnated. This is also an ego just more evolved to be more free from the limitations
Yes.
that this body gives, but it's still an ego.
Yeah.
And the idea, also the vocabulary in English is not so refined in that, like the Hebrew or the Sanskrit are languages that literally dealt with this stuff, so there are more terminology to define the nuances. So I like the Atman in yoga, like it's like that it's that self that can be either identified with the body or identified with the emotions, like the energetic body, or identified with the mind, like with the thinking also, or but in or identified with soul, or identified with the Atma itself, like with the Brahman. When the Atman becomes the Brahman, it's like the non-dual, which is, there is only one self in all existence, which is I, but it is in every, like, subject is that same I. It's not that I am and you not. It's every I is that, and so this is in a way a fifth person perspective, comparing to fourth person perspective, that there is no crystallized ego, it's more a flow state, but it's still expression of myself. Like, it's still me relative to another.
I want to ground these concepts now
Yeah.
into our lived experience by taking two subjects. And
Okay.
one subject, for example, is the Great Reset.
Okay.
Or this movement that we witnessed now in the last 3 years, division between one part of humanity being afraid, another part of humanity thinking that the fear is an illusion and that there's a greater agenda. How do you perceive this from a collective consciousness perspective? Where do you think we're going? In the sense of, do you think everyone is just a certain ego that is playing its role and being carried by this wave into our new island. Because I used to see things as black, or at some point I did start seeing things as black and white. That you know, coming back to this Rothschild and Israel, and how the agreement to give Israel to Jewish people was signed in 1920 before the war, and how perhaps the war was created with the agenda of oppressing the Jewish people and then claiming the state of Israel. What do you what do you think about these so-called conspiracy theories? What why is there such a division between these two realities of certain people believing one truth and others believing a different truth?
Yeah, I think in a way the truer truth is in between these two extremes, and the reason that is more difficult to bring it to synthesis is because a lot of information is classified and hidden, and it's part of the lack of democracy in a way, and it's still existing, like democracy in the true meaning. I mean, like that the people decide about everything, the majority, and I think many of the conspiratorial ideas are accurate, but I also think that many of the ideas go way too extreme, like too much. And so because some goes way too extreme, like serving some paranoia interest to some people, so of course there will be then more resistance from more conservative mindsets that are too afraid to meet these shadows in a way, these collective shadows. But it's also within, like, yeah, there are people that are sadists, there are people that are psychopaths, there are people that are lying systematically. Like, there are many people in power positions like that, because there is not really regulation of it. It's so easy to steal money from people in a way these days. Still, it's like money itself, how it is defined, like how the banks come to it. It's like it's so not really like inflation in a way. It's just stealing money from the people, and the ability to print money that out of thin air, that only very few have that ability. So it puts them in a way beyond everyone else in this economic game.
Yeah, they
And
can do anything. Sorry, yes.
yeah,
You can
yeah,
pull money from thin air. You can do whatever you want.
yeah,
But
yeah,
yes.
and still in a way it's serving society, like, because society is playing into this game because it is still serving something, and in a way because a better alternative also is not played. Like, people don't know better game, and I think for many people it touches pride. It's like they are too proud to understand, to doubt, like to doubt their belief system. Like, especially, I mean, on the conservative side, but also on the extremely, like, the paranoid conspiratorial side. It's like, but because when the identity is defined and crystallized, it's like, then who am I, what it means about me? And again, plants can be something that will shake that. Actually, I see four main ways to support people to experience these states that touching non-dual states. Neither of them is guaranteed, but one is plants, and again it can be eventually negative, and that's for sure then not full integration of what surfaced up. Or it can be also positive, but still not necessarily fully integrating. But it can be accelerating an experience of the non-dual state. And I think this is, that non-dual state is in a way a direct meeting with the true self. And when I say the true self is of course not the ego, but also not a self that is relative. It's like, again, it's like God in a way, like how Spinoza was defining.
Wait, I'm coming back.
Okay.
Okay, stopped. Good. Yes, non-dual state. The thing is, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, come on. Okay, I'm turning it off. I'm turning it off.
Okay.
Turning it off. It's not my phone, but
Mm.
oh, I can't.
Oh, I didn't hear anything.
Pin. Ah, you didn't realize it was ringing.
I didn't hear anything.
Oh, good. Okay, that's very good. You just thought I was leaving for no reason.
For sure, reason. I just didn't know what.
The thing is, though,
Mhm.
life, I think life puts us into separation and connectedness.
Yeah.
Like waves of an ocean or something. It does it by itself. Because now like circling back to your like the possibility of going on a journey with someone, then perceiving something which is supposed to bring you into connectedness, like a mushroom trip. It's supposed to bring you into single consciousness, but you might envision something that brings you into separation consciousness.
I don't say it's suppose. It can be taken with many different types of intentions, but it is a tool that can do that relatively efficiently. And I see a particular value in inspiring minds to experience this state of mind. And I see this state of mind as different than altered states of mind, because it's touching, it's like someone can be conscious, lucid dreaming, for example, conscious while asleep and dreaming, and then it opens much more possibilities of what is reality, because when we dream it can feel as real and sometimes even more real than when we wake up into this world. And so like it can make an ontological shift of what is the world. But then to lucid deep sleep, that is like another level, and this is in a way the non-dual state. It's so in dream state you can experience many states of consciousness, many states of mind in a way. Mm-hmm. It's way more vast than the ego state. And in a way, art is like dreams shining through cracks in this reality, and showing that beauty that is beyond, or that inspiration that can be perceived. But lucid deep sleep touches something even more fundamental. And
what is lucid deep sleep? Have I ever experienced it? How do you know that you're lucid deep sleeping?
I think it is like when you touch that, it just like there is no doubt. It's in a way more real than anything.
So you just know that this is lucid deep sleep.
Lucid deep sleep is one way of experiencing that. Like, so lucid dreaming can be also a path to experience that non-dual state.
Mm-hmm.
Same like plant medicine
Mm-hmm.
can be another way.
Mm-hmm.
Another way can be, for example, um, through discipline. So there is the fast way, like breath work. Like it's like you can put yourself in a state of hyperventilation, or like, and until you like, also the brain is just flooded, it's just relaxing, all it's being fully conscious without any thought of interpretation of what is perceived, but the senses are fully open. Therefore, what you perceive is like, in a way, looking into the sun and being blinded by the light, because there is no interpretation. And part of the interpretation is also of our reality is the interpretation of me and not me. So there is no self there. There is no self to perceive something. There is no definition of anything. And it's just absolute beingness in a way. And in that moment of that state, it's not that there is like, oh, now I'm in that state. No, it's just when someone goes out of the state, it's like, oh, that was that. And we go constantly to that state when we fall asleep. It's just not conscious. So doing it consciously, this is, I find much importance in that, because I see our developmental stages in a way leading towards that. This is the vector, because it's like really becoming the absolute happening through us. And I see it as a continuum of, as like, as a child have the difficulty to see from your perspective. If you say, this is the back of my hand and this is the front, so you ask the child, age 5 or 4, like, what side am I seeing now? And the child would say the front, because the child see the front, but I see the back actually. But it's still like, there is not, like, there are stages of cognitive development, of ability to perceive more complexity in a way, to see other perspectives and integrate them within the self and synthesize the finer truth from it. And ego is another natural stage that we need to learn. We need to have this individual perspective, and then we grow beyond, and we can perceive from ego perspectives in general, but we are not identified with that. And it's all streams that happening within me. And it's like, and so there is a different narrative that moves us. And it is, constructed from the collective psyche, which is also a collection of archetypes, and which is also, these archetypes are expression of something more refined that is expressing in every culture that nature have created, and so on. There is not like that sense of absolute self in a way. It's just like the absolute self is another archetype in a way. So the self is looser, and then it grows beyond that to being it in a way, like I am that. So it's, but it comes from the full integration, from the habit of shadow work, of meeting the shadow and integrating peace. And in a way, even to say, I as individual, as me and not you, I cannot come to that stage fully if you are not there as well, because you are also me, you are part of me. It's like you are part of I. And so it's like a planetary awakening happening through us. It's not only not individual, it's not a journey of oneself.
Mm.
And so to bring people taste of that state, I see it as catalyzer to
Mm.
to growth, because our society in a way very much teaches to ego construction, and there is no further acknowledgement of growth.
Mm.
And these non-dual states, like, yeah, it can inspire the intellect to perceive infinity, infinite power of infinity, or whatever to say, but it's also can inspire the emotional aspect. It's like to feel like this is the source of compassion, because I would have naturally more compassion for myself on certain behavior than I would have for another, even though I can play differently, but in the deepest core, I will have more empathy to myself because I can understand myself better than I can anyone else. But if it's all myself, then I will have naturally more compassion. And that's like the Bodhisattva path in a way.
So,
And,
yeah. Do you think,
and yeah,
yes,
okay.
go on, go on.
Yeah, okay. So plants and dreaming and breath work, these are ways of having it like these states. I think plants and breath work are like fast ways, and also sexuality. I think is the most natural way. It's
Mm. Interesting.
the number one way that people spontaneously can experience such state, through the
Wow.
union with
Mm.
another,
Mm.
the union of orgasms with another.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, but it can be also through discipline, like breath work, and fine refined discipline is like through meditation, and that actually that is the way that also can bring it to integration, comparing to all the other ways, because it's it's like I walked there. I did not take a ride there on a train or airplane or whatever. I am there now. It's
Mm.
like I am where I am.
Mm. Yeah. I also imagine it like a tall building, and you can take a substance and it'll go with the elevator quickly, but then you
Mhm,
quickly go down.
mhm.
Or meditation, you climb and you're more
Yeah,
stably able to exist in the level you reached.
yeah. It's slow but stable.
But to close, I think this is a good time to start closing this conversation um, slowly. I wanted to ask you, where do you see this exploration of consciousness going? What do you think is this hesitancy and stigma that's still very much present around uh, substances? Do you think we're leaving it behind now? And do you see any cause for concern?
Any
You know,
what
the
call for
cause,
concern?
any cause for
Oh,
concern? Because I know some people really, maybe they do get lost in
yeah.
altered states. I don't know. Do you think that
Yeah.
this, like, society's push for controlling substance use, do you think it has any validity, or is it something that is just coming from the past? Because what
The
I
push
yeah.
towards consuming, you mean?
Sorry.
The push towards consuming?
The push towards controlling it also, or it's still being
Oh,
taboo. It's still not really cleared in a way. Like there's still people who fear it very much. Like something like ayahuasca is illegal here in Iceland.
yeah,
Most substances are illegal. Plant medicines, I think, consuming, selling them
yeah.
is
I think it
illegal in most
depends.
countries.
It depends on the society. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me that alcohol will be legal and that would not be legal. But I can see society that, yeah, both of them are not legal, for example, yet still um, the benefit of using psychedelics in therapy can be used in a very like a setting that is professional in a way, because there can be great advantages of it, and yet yeah, it can be like playing with fire in a way, and and things happen. Often there are positive experiences, I mean, but sometimes there are negative experiences, and another approach I can see is that people are
Mm.
just responsible for themselves, and there is no cultivation of ignorance, but cultivation of knowledge. And
Mm.
yeah,
Yes,
like it's just the
absolutely.
person is responsible for their
Mm.
own taking.
Mm.
Um, I don't feel like either encouraging it or suppressing it.
Mm.
Um, I don't really know what would be better for society. I think it would need to reflect the
Mm.
society itself, and different
Mhm.
societies would have different ethics around it.
Yeah, you know what you're reminding me of? You're reminding
Mhm.
me of driving. Because, like so many car accidents happen. People die in car accidents. That
Yes,
doesn't mean that driving generally is a bad thing.
yeah.
And as we have improved the car and the roads and the signs, regulations around driving, there have been less accidents, less deaths. I just remember this because I was getting my license and we were looking through the years. I was getting it in Estonia and it was like, this is the amount of people that died in car accidents in 1980, then 1990, then 2000. And it was significantly less, even though there's more drivers now. But the car itself has been more suited for, for accidents, and maybe
Mhm.
people are more aware now. So perhaps this is also the approach that the substance in itself is not good or bad, but we do need to understand how to use it in such a way where it will produce the most beneficial effect.
Um, yeah, I think the wise thing is to integrate it to some degree, whether it is supervised or free. But if it's free, I think it's even more important to stop the cultivation of ignorance, either by hiding information or shaming opinions,
Mm.
or by extra promoting opinions that are with a certain agenda, and not cultivating critical thinking with as much opinions as possible, and so people will think for themselves and not be like heard in a way.
People don't
Um,
like choosing, though. We don't like to think that much. It's too confusing. I
I
mean,
don't
not,
know.
I mean, I'm generalizing. I'm just saying that I remember watching this study that, like,
Mhm.
there's like 12 different shampoo brands, or I don't know, 30 different shampoo brands by now.
Okay.
And that choice in itself is almost, it can deplete our willpower. Like the more you have to choose, What was it exactly? This is not my thought, which is why I have to recall it. But so if I had to synthesize it into my own thought, I'm saying that what people probably hate most in life is the necessity to choose, because this means that they have to think for themselves, which means they have to take responsibility for their own action.
Yeah, but that is growing up. Yeah, so
Yes,
some people want
exactly.
to stay Peter Pan. Yeah, like some people want to stay, yeah, just stay in their egocentric bubble.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
and
yeah.
be and put it all on the parent, and that's why these governments still exist. Like that's why, like they are serving that in a way.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
not that they are
Exactly.
the bad ones and
Yes,
the people
yes,
are victims. It's
yes,
just two sides of the same coin.
yes. Yes, so as we change our consciousness, our governance will automatically change
Yeah,
because
the
it will have to
governments
start
have,
responding to us. Well, it always responds to us.
yeah, it have power just because people give it power. Money have power just because people give it value.
Yeah.
And and if there is different perception,
Mm.
then just reality changes, and there is critical mass of perception, and it is very influenced by education. And education is not just the schooling system, but it's also the media,
Mm.
like
Mm.
the information that mind is exposed to.
Mm.
And the little I see I can do is to inspire. It takes back to the beginning of the talk. It's like the yeah, like why would I see people claiming in the media? I think it's the main channel also in Iceland. Like, why would they claim that I am a cult leader of a pedophile cult? And like, like something like that. That's like, and using drugs to affect the minds of kids and women for my benefit. Like, like what? I it's whoa. And I at first I took it in a way that I mean I anyway went for a break just before that, and it surfaced quite soon after I took a break from facilitating, and suddenly that is brought. But I never perceived myself as even a spiritual like a guru. I have never like, but so that's the beginning. But then taking it to like the pedophilic part and using the drugs on kids, and wow, that's like
Wait, I thought that was my bit.
yeah, you are
But I'm happy to pass it on to you. Please take it.
you did that event that they analyzed so eloquently, but in a way I was presented as the leader of the cult.
Yes, you're right. Yes.
And
I mean, you have the looks for it.
yeah.
You were cast. It's a movie, and you were cast as the charming cult leader.
Yeah, mind controlling everyone that is related to me, of course.
Yes.
So much power I receive from these projections. It's like wow. Um, but it with all the ridiculousness of it, and I guess yeah, people need sometimes a scapegoat to project their own shadows, and like nobody really asked me. um, and it reminds me the time that you came to me to ask, I guess because people said like I had this photo of Baphomet,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like
exactly.
this archetype, and you asked me about it,
Yeah. Tell us
like
tell
oh
us all
what
about it. I'm
like
gonna put it on the screen so people can see it. Imagine it here now.
okay.
Yeah, I'll put it on the screen in editing. So yeah, tell us about this because this brought a lot of like fear into people seeing this or misunderstanding maybe because not a lot of people understand this figure and what he represents and in general in my understanding the star like in this position upside
Mhm.
down is the material world ruling over the spiritual world or kind of the shadow taking over or I don't know it has some kind of negative connotation.
Yeah. So the it, first of all, is just the fact you came and asked. It was for me after. Oh, it's nice that you ask, because I am putting it there because of the symbolical meaning of it,
Hmm.
and realizing that actually no one else came to ask, and many people have said a lot of stories and conclusions about it without knowing me even. and
Interesting. Hmm.
and so it was nice, refreshing, yeah, someone that can just innocently ask and not just decide,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, like decide for me what is my intention or what am I saying.
Assuming,
um,
yeah. Assuming. Never assume. This is something I have learned. Never assume the worst. It's bad to assume the worst. Well, because it creates separation, right? If I automatically think that you're a bad person, I'm not going to ask you and I'm not going to have a chance to learn that you are good.
um, well, good and bad is again a matter of judgment.
Well, yes, but I'm not going to have a chance to understand who you understand you.
you
So
you will not have the opportunity to see my perspective. You will be fully saturated with your perspective or with a perception that was suggested to you by someone else,
mhm.
but you will never meet the source.
Mhm.
So it will always be a certain gap.
Mhm.
And that gap can be bigger or smaller,
And
but
it leads to sadness and hatred and fear.
it
Because
can.
anything we don't understand, we mm, reject.
It, it depends. Many people, yeah, afraid of the unknown, but some people are actually feeling comfortable with the mystery. It's just not a majority.
Mm.
Um, wait, let's have a little water break.
Okay, go. Yeah, I keep
Yeah.
thinking that how much we've been talking for a while, as usual. Yeah, 2 hours already. Go for it.
Okay.
I'm also gonna. My sunshine is incredibly bright today. I'm trying
Nice.
to I'm trying to tone it down, but And you know what? It's like the weather seems lovely from the window, but when you go outside, it's so cold.
Yeah,
It's really
I,
cold. Okay.
I remember that.
Okay.
Um,
So we're back.
yeah.
Tell.
So
Mm.
Baphomet, like he was, I mean, it it's the symbol of the horned god, and it's a god that was in many pagan cultures, and like very associated with the Druid culture, like the ancient Germanic, like as the god of nature, nature and fertility and the wisdom of nature. And it was the main god for many years, many generations. And when Christianity came, that was the main threat. When Christianity came to Northern Europe, like that was the main threat on the authority, the spiritual authority in a way. Who is the strongest god or something like that? So that's how the devil got horns, is because they try to make the devil the the source of all evil. They try to make it in the image of that god, but that god is the god of nature, and I see it very much symbolizing also the disconnection from nature, also from our own nature, and also from nature
Right.
itself,
Yes.
and bringing it back in a way to integrate it into our being. It's like reconnecting to nature, because we are not really separated from nature. Like this human ego that see itself above, I don't. This is not the way I perceive things. Um,
Mm.
uh, I think, yeah, there are animals that have intelligence. Some aspects of intelligence even can be more than us, and even mycelia can behave in intelligence that, how would we define it as intelligence? Like not necessarily conscious, but also what is consciousness? Like we're very limited to our perspective. And like dolphins have brains that are even more evolved than ours. Uh,
Mm. But what
I
about the
mean,
star? What about the star?
the star. So it's the five-pointed star. Yeah, it can be drawn with the central one going down or up,
Yeah.
and in a way, the essential meaning of it before the demonization is this star represent Venus. Both of them represent Venus.
Both the upward
Yeah,
facing and the
yeah,
downward facing.
yeah. Because if you map the shape of Venus around Earth in the sky, it is not exactly a circle or ellipse. It makes like a five-petaled circle.
Mm.
So that's why it became a five-pointed star. And then there is the Venus is up to 60 degrees from the sun. We cannot see it more than 60 degrees because it's more towards the sun than Earth. So, but we either see it in the after sunset or before sunrise. And for many years, it was considered to be two different stars, but both of them are the brightest in the sky because Venus is the brightest one, except the moon and the sun. And then at some point there was the understanding that it's actually the same. So it's like the pentagram upside, it's when it's sun rising, and opposite when it's on setting.
Wow.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah,
For some reason, I also have morning star. Okay, Lucifer.
yeah.
The meaning of Lucifer is morning star. or the shining
Yeah,
one, but also
yeah.
morning star. Morning star.
Star of the
Venus.
morning, and then the
Venus
star
is
of the evening
yeah,
also.
but Venus is Lucifer, and you're saying that this god, he was also the represented by Venus?
Yeah, yeah. It is Venus. Venus is Lucifer, actually. It's the same being in a way, and the association of them is so different. And it's part of this artificial division of like Christian. I think a lot of the construction of our collective psyche is engineered by some, like I think there is like the mythological like the Romans. I think they were taking it to a very high degree of mastery of control of minds is actually, and it was their method of conquer. They conquered a new country, they translate the country's scriptures to Roman, they burn the original, and then they retranslate from Roman to the original, but with differences to kind of make sure they control the narrative that is taught. And then after 2 generations, they fully control the minds of the new country because, like, education.
Yeah, it's almost like you're now tapping into the coding, like the programming that is running the computer of our brain, and asking who programmed it and how.
So
And
it's just it's existing, and it was refined with the years. It started, of course, in more ancient times than Rome, but it's refining and it's still existing to some degree. That's very much relates to this governmental hierarchy as I see it.
mm,
And the reason the pentagram is pointing down, because it is the sunset. Now there is a essential difference between the day and the night sky. The day sky, you see only the sun in a way. Like sometimes, of course, you can see the moon or something, but basically you see only the sun and you are blinded by it because it's so bright. So it's like, okay, you meet the light part of you, like the ego, the familiar definition. But then in the night, it is the opportunity to meet the esoterics, the inner parts that are not necessarily expressed. And like, so the moon is the governor of the night, but then you can go deeper to finer nuances through the planets and the stars, realizing finer aspects of yourself as well. And the Venus setting is like the more representation of uh, opening to the wisdom of the night. It's like the Baphomet, it holds there like the sun and the moon, but then the pentagram pointing down is like, okay, now go deeper to the stars and not just the sun and the moon, because they are way bigger than all else. And in a way, it can be the light side and the shadow side. But then there are these finer nuances, the subtler aspects, like the archetypes that we can go more fine into. And Venus is the first one of them because it is the brightest of the stars. And and the idea, yeah, the pointing up is more Venus becoming not visible because the sun takes over the light of Venus. But going down, it's becoming brighter now, and we can be revealed more to the mysteries of nature, of cosmos, of the astral. And
wow.
that's the original meaning. But of course, a lot of stories went upon it and made it the devil. And but it just shows me the ignorance of the people who say this stuff, and the quick to judge, because actually, except you, no one really asked me about it, like innocently, why
Mm.
it is there. And for me, nature is in a way greater entity we are part of, and and the cosmos is is also nature. It's like, and getting to know the mysteries of nature is getting to know myself. It's like it's similar to me, and I find much passion in that encouragement within me, and I like it to be met or to um, enjoy together. And yeah, but I see uh, like it can threaten some people. I don't think it is the symbol itself. I think it's more their own issues that still come to resolution.
The threat. Okay, the threat is to the system of thought. Because
Yeah.
when there is hidden knowledge, somebody unveils this hidden knowledge. So to them, this is now obvious.
Mhm.
To those that is still not obvious to, it is just threatening. It's to them it's just a sign of danger, because in their reading of signs,
Mhm.
this is a sign that says danger, evil. And so it's just ignorance. So what you're doing by putting up these symbols is
Mhm.
you're bringing out the collective ignorance, which at
Yeah.
first can come as this huge wave of accusation. Because when we looked at, yeah, the definition of
Authority.
devil, it's the one who accuses. And if
Mhm.
there and in my exploration of light and darkness, I've understood that to be in the light is to recognize the innocence of all people, all at all times.
Mhm.
Which is a hard thing to do, but it's the path of the one who's without ego, because the ego will accuse eventually when they feel threatened.
Yeah, I understand because it surprised me the degree of accusation. I understand I have not estimated correctly the degree of the ignorance. I thought there is more like understanding in the collective, especially uh, like yeah. I thought Iceland kind yeah. It was surprising for me, and um,
But that was
yeah,
our own ignorance, my dear.
yeah,
This was our own ignorance, because
yeah,
it was the same for me too. It was my own
yeah,
ignorance of the ignorance
yeah,
of the separation between the two worldviews, that the bubble we're in and the other bubble.
yeah. Yeah, I was ignorant about where people minds are at,
Yeah.
and which part of that is also ignorance about their ignorance about the construction of the collective psyche.
Yeah.
And also, it's like for me, it's so obvious. Of course, it's nature to bring up front, and if nature is demonized, it's like the god of nature. Like no, it's like to bring it up front because for me it's obvious that nature is love. It's like life. It's not really different,
And
and this is also how I connected to myself, even though it was very sad for me to see all the hate towards me from people who don't know me and just assume stuff. And that is based on lies, apparently. Um, but I was, because I guess, because I was so much in my life retreating, like sometimes even for 6 months, just retreating alone for meditation. I did it quite number of times, and so I can be with myself. I don't need so much like many the social affirmation to feel um, like that I'm okay. But it did confront me with a challenge because I was not in a retreat. I was in society. Um, but also seeing it in a way that yeah, this is it's even not personal from the people. It is in a way through these people, that they are the strongest holders of that aspect, but it is the collective consciousness that is asking from me in a way. It's even like, it's not even asking, it's begging um, for understanding better, for knowing better, for realizing, for integrating that piece as well, because
Yes.
naturally
Yes.
consciousness wants to come into knowing itself. It wants to come into wholeness, and this is love, because that's how love is growing, is through the unity of more parts. And that kind of inspires me to anyway continue. And even though I felt tired from doing this stuff, like these workshops, or like supporting people in experience, it's because I've done it for over 2 decades. And yet it's actually, and of course there are people also that wanted me to continue. It was not all negative. It's just those people are not so loud. And also it's more the people who know me, comparing to those who are um, saying other stuff. And yet, um, yeah, it's like,
It's
I
love.
understand.
Yes.
Yeah, and I understand I have actually a certain responsibility to um, keep on showing also that side, because it would be not fair to let whatever agenda this article in the media that was uh, targeting me and us and the community, like whatever agenda they have, it's extremely one-sided, and it is very much um, also, it's like taking it far from reality. It's just putting their stuff that is absurd, at least as I see it. And but it is not encouraging conversation about it and hearing the other side. It's deciding for me, who am I and what is my motive and what I want and how I behave and what I say and what I do, even if it is not true. And and it's not fair for the people that there is not also another side, that they can think for themselves and not be fully influenced just from that
Yeah.
propaganda, even I can call it.
We are not victims. We can stand up for ourselves. And this is what we're learning. This experience has called us to learn how to be even more courageous about who we really are. I really think that. Or seeing the purpose and the beauty of being yourself in a way. Doing what you said you feel responsible for, which is enlightening the collective shadow in this strange interaction between light and dark.
Yeah, but it's not just enlightening this, it's the persistency, because this is what I also noticed. I took a year of a break. I mean, of course, these um, uh, articles that came out, it gave me food for contemplation. It's like, oh, maybe there is something there. Of course, it's a lot of lies, but I try to find, okay, but what can I learn from it? I mean, there is some, and I understand. I touched a very deep fear of the collective in a way. It's not just me, but I feel very um, uh,
Central.
yeah, on of central part of the projection of these articles. And and I know there is nothing to be ashamed about. I know that, like, I know what actually happened, like, or what I am aware. I'm not deluded around that. So I know I don't need to worry, even though they say, yeah, it's a police thing. But of course, the police is not taking it seriously, because if what they say is true, it's just to make a storm. Like, it's like a lot of politics is with that, and like a division in a way. And yet I can stay silent, and then people, when people hear one story many times, it's just
Yeah.
shaping the narrative. But
Yeah.
if there is an offering of another perception, it brings more thinking. And yes, let's bring more perceptions. It's not like my perception is the absolute, but let's bring a conversation then. And I guess this topic is important because it is surfacing up.
Yes.
And so that's the responsibility I see. It's like, it's in this year I took a break. I saw that it's not really like, I was hoping, even when I was facilitating stuff, I was hoping that someone else will do these workshops I do. It's like, I want to live in a culture that it's not me needing to lead in what culture I would like to live in a culture that, like, in a way, more integral, I would say, than the current one. And but it's like I see people are not doing it, and maybe sometimes a little bit, but it's like it's too scary. And I can understand now why, because yeah, there is a lot of social media bullying of someone who dares, um, and it's the social media thing is new, so there is no regulation of twist of truth for a sociopathic agenda, or how to call it. But
I'm glad that you are embracing your divine mission here on Earth.
I really hope someone else will do that.
Of course, we are doing it. We are doing it. This is what this new age is all about. Yesterday, Saturn entered Pisces. We're entering a new time.
I'm doing it because I see someone needs to do that, but it's not my favorite thing to do. And same also with the workshops I bring. It's like people ask, and it's like no one dares to bring this stuff so much stress. And facilitators that are around the world, yeah, they have way more countries with a society that is more open and more people, and it doesn't worth it often to come to Iceland to bring this stuff. Like, this what I see from them as well.
Well, let's see what unfolds now. Let's see what unfolds this year. Last year was fun. This year should be, I think this year last year was the foundation, and this year we're building the castle. So
Yeah.
so good luck with that. And thanks for coming on. I think this is a good time to end our interview for today.
Yeah, very bright night.
Thank you for Kadesh for coming on. Thank you everyone for watching our lengthy and entertaining video, and see you next time.
Thank you.